Closing arguments in Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking and racketeering trial wrapped up in New York City court today. It was the defense's turn after the prosecution delivered their arguments Thursday. Combs' lawyers called his prosecution a fake trial and accused the government of badly exaggerating evidence of his so-called swinger lifestyle. Combs has pleaded not guilty to 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman was in the courtroom today. She joins us now. All right, Katrina, let's start with the latest. So what did we hear from the defense today?
So the defense essentially said, as you mentioned, that this is a fake trial, that the evidence that was presented before this jury does not prove the government's charges. And they also worked to undermine these witnesses, to paint them as liars, each of these women who took the stand. There's also something else that stood out to me was some of the language that they were using in this argument. Fake trial. They claim that Sean Combs has been targeted by the government. And it really reminded me of when I was covering now President Trump's trial. It's just, I don't know if this is some kind of appeal for the pardon he may be asking for, but that language really struck me, as did the fact that the prosecution later pointed out that, like Trump, Combs is someone who once thought that he was above the law, at the head of this company, a powerful celebrity. But some of the key points that the defense worked to make, Kelly, are that just these were consensual acts. These are personal relationships, that there was no conspiracy here at the company. If anything, as one of the assistants said, these personal errands they would run for Combs that were related to the hotel nights were 1% of the work. And that conspiracy aspect is really important for the racketeering charge, Kelly.
And I'm curious, how did the prosecution respond to that in their rebuttal?
So, I mean, they refuted a number of things. In fact, they said that there was a litany of errors in the case that the defense presented. And just to add, actually, it really resonated with Combs' supporters. I was in the overflow for a little bit, and at the end of it, Kelly, they were all clapping and just very much on board. He even got Combs' lead defense attorney, Mark Agnifilo, some of the jurors to smile. He's a very charismatic person. But the prosecution came back with an extremely strong rebuttal. For example, when it comes to this allegation that women came and lied on the stand in their testimony against Sean Combs, Maureen Comey, who's the lead prosecutor, pointed out that these women just don't have a motivation to lie. Cassie Ventura, Sean Combs' ex-girlfriend, has already gotten $30 million, $20 million in a settlement with Sean Combs, $10 million from the Intercontinental Hotel, where there's a video that captured Combs assaulting her. And so she has no reason to get on the stand in a federal trial and commit perjury. And then with Mia, a former employee of Sean Combs, they pointed out Sean Combs' team accused her of acting. And they said she really took a lot of courage to get on that stand. And just to describe what she was like, she just seemed so beaten down when she was testifying about these experiences she had, Kelly. Her voice would get very quiet. She could never look up when she talked about these instances of violence and sexual assault. And the prosecutor said, you know, there's no Oscar or Tony for acting in this courtroom. And it took a lot of courage for these women to come forward with these allegations against Sean Combs, a very powerful person.
I love the flavor that you provide. I mean, that's the value of having you there every step of this way, because these are the important moments that are going to impact the jury, which to that point, you have watched this from beginning to end. The jury is going to get this case shortly. What do you think could be the biggest sticking points for them when it comes to a decision?
I think one of the biggest things has always been this racketeering conspiracy charge, and whether there is some form of agreement between Combs and the people who worked for him to commit these alleged underlying predicate acts. Now, what the prosecution says, though, Kelly, is there really just has to be Combs and one other person. There's someone who's been named as a key co-conspirator. It's his former chief of staff, Christina Kaufman, and we have seen a lot of messages where she seems very clearly aware of a lot of the things that were going on. But I do think for the jury, they may have to decide if they feel like there was a willful and knowing agreement there. I think this case has also been a really interesting study in the complexity of human relationships and relationship dynamics. So, you know, it's very complicated whether a lot of these acts were consensual. These women stayed with him. So maybe the jury's understanding, too, of abusive dynamics and how those can play into these incidents. But again, Kelly, the prosecution says that of all these freak-offs and hotel nights, the jury just has to decide that one for each woman happened through force, fraud, or coercion. So even if all the others were consensual, they just have to think that one will find him guilty.
Well, it's going to be a very interesting next week. I know you're going to be following it. Katrina Kaufman, thank you.